Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. I'm doing my usual introduction to my weekly newsletter for July 6, 2018. Some interesting stuff as always in the newsletter. I've actually used my Out of Scotland news section to highlight the Scottish Weekend, which celebrates his 33rd birthday on September the 7th, 8th and 9th of this year in Belgium. Giving you a little bit of a review on what you can expect to find if you go there. It's become bigger and bigger every year. It's done a great job basically at promoting Scottish culture in Europe essentially. I've also done a review on the Clan MacIntyre book, which is now available after some 30 years of work. Over many years I've been corresponding with Martin in the USA. Basically his father wrote the very first book, L.D. MacIntyre. In fact, only about a week before his death did he actually achieve the three targets that he had, which was to find out who was the current chief of Clan MacIntyre, to write a history, and to get the clan chief recognised by the Lord Lion. And only 1 week before he died, he managed to achieve that third and final objective of getting the Lord Lion to recognise the chief of Clan MacIntyre. So really well done on him, and his son has taken up the work, and over the last 30 or so years has been building up much more information on the clan. And so I've done a bit of a review of the book, which is now included, and telling you how to get hold of it. So I hope you enjoy these two articles. As to the Scottish news, my first article is about BAE wins a multi-billion pound Australian warship contract. And hopefully that'll be the first of many other contracts that we'll get. So I thought you might be interested in reading that article. The next story is about Scotland's role in pioneering treatments and innovations in the health service. The next article is about charting a route to Scotland's past through one man's journey. The characters and way of life which so defined a disappearing generation of Scots islanders and coastal communities is indelibly forged in its story. I really enjoyed that article actually, so I hope you like that one. Next Tory leader, Javid, tops the poll for the first time. This is this Pakistani immigrant. That's where he traces his roots from. But it's quite interesting. He seems to be a very good man to run the Home Office. He'll be the one that will be setting up the immigration system after Brexit. But he seems to have a kind of neutral impact. So from that point of view, he could make a very good leader for the Conservative Party to take over from May. So it's probably worth keeping an eye on how he develops. I've also got you a story of the Governor-General's Canada Day message. Because it's obviously Canada Day is like July the 4th for America. So it's always worth a read. Also, the next story is Dig in Old Town could see Edinburgh's history being rewritten. So the painstaking excavation is underway at the Cowgate India buildings in the heart of the old town, the site of the forthcoming Virgin Hotel. The next story I've picked is Scotland breaks temperature record. Always of note when we break a record, but it's always been pretty hot, as it is in Canada, and I suspect Canada is going to shortly be saying that they've broken a high temperature record as well. So we'll look out for that. Busting the Remain-inspired myth about trade on WTO terms, said the EU is also a member of the WTO, as are most countries in the world, meaning that it is bound by the WTO's rules. Several of these render the infamous lorry queue scenario highly implausible. So if you're keeping track of the Brexit discussions, good story there. Australian optimism points the way to a global Brexit future. It's amazing how our friends around the world are more optimistic about Brexit than we seem to be ourselves in this country. But it's always encouraging to read these reports. Next one is staggering rise in drug-related deaths in Scotland. The National Records of Scotland, NRS, reported there were 934 drug-related deaths registered in 2017, the highest figure since records began in 1996. Not a good story, but you should be aware of the problems that we have. The next story is the latest Glasgow Harbour development to transform Clydeside. An ambitious residential and commercial development that will transform a long neglected gap site in Glasgow is taking a step forward. So encouraging that. I don't want to read that story. Then the next one for you is Trump will tell NATO nations US cannot be the world's piggy bank. What the president is going to do is go into these meetings with the mindset to protect the American people, stand with our partners and allies. Next story I picked is less than a third of students in Scotland plan to stay in the country. The figure of 32% compares to 69% of London students who said they want to remain in the UK capital after graduation. So some food for thought there. Gov's plan to take back control of fishing. Secretary Michael Gove has released the government's white paper on fishing, heralding it as a chance to take back control of our waters and rebuild coastal communities after the disastrous EU common fisheries policy. Another story I've got is medieval games board found in search for Pictish monastery. Archaeologist Al Cameron said the board was found near the Old Deer, was a very rare find, with it used to play the Norse strategy game of Hinfataf. So if you're interested in archaeology, that's a nice wee story. Then Donald Trump's visit puts Britain's Brexit dependence on show. When Donald Trump visits Britain next week, Prime Minister Theresa May will have to face harsh reality. Brexit makes Britain more dependent than ever on an alliance with the most unpredictable US president in living memory. And she's not well suited to deal with that kind of thing. Anyway, another story is Scottish position on EU relationship. Constitution to Brexit, it's a contribution rather, to the Brexit white paper. It's always interesting to read Scotland's view on things, which tend to be very much skewed towards independence, of course. And the final story is, on Friday, let's hope the Brexiteers save Theresa May from herself. If May convinces her cabinet to accept the Ollie Robbins proposal, it is likely to spell doom for her party. So, these are the stories I've selected for you this week. On to Electric Canadian. The Order of Canada appointments have been announced, and you can read all about them at the link I provided there. Some great Canadians are getting chosen. The refugees from slavery in Canada West. This is a report to the Freedmen's Inquiry Commission of S.G. Howe in 1864. Canada did a lot of work on the slavery issue in the USA, and one of the notable Canadian Scots, as it happened, was a good friend of Abraham Lincoln. So interesting report that. I've got up another edition of the Engineering Journal. This is the 1945 volume, and we'll add others each week. Some of the topics discussed in this one is the Americans honour Canadian engineers, anti-malaria drainage in Trinidad, atomic bomb and Canada's contributions to it, atomic power, Canada's pulp and paper industry, Canadian engineers' contribution to victory, that's World War II of course, diamond drills and well drills on the Raft Lake canals, diesel, electric and industry and transportation, engineer and the community. Is that, oh, I know it's a spelling error there. I'll just change that. Engineer and the community, farm electrification, industrial news, lighthouse and depth charges, metallurgy, machine design, National Housing Administration, a list of obituaries, oil, the outline of the preliminary steps in community planning, pollution hazards in a water supply system, radar as an art to air navigation, rural electrification, soil mechanics, sheep rock from mines, steep rock from mines, water wheel generators, and what is an engineer. So some really good stories actually in there. Canada's provinces, I've added volume 5 to this collection, which is United Canada 1840 to 1867. I've added the Mining Journal. It's the official organ of the Gold Miners Association of Nova Scotia, now renamed to just the Mining Journal. So the one I have this time is for 1892, which starts with an article on the coal industry of Nova Scotia in 1891. Then I put up a book about the Marquis of Dufferin and Ava. It's by Sir Alfred Lyle. It's in 2 volumes, and he was actually, for 2 terms, the Governor General of Canada. However, he also played an important role all over the world, in Europe, Russia and China. I added this publication to our Masters of Canada section as the 3rd book under the 24th entry in our Makers of Canada page. Quite frankly, he's an amazing person, considering what he actually achieved all over the world. So these are the kind of things I like to read, because I understand how they played a role in the world, essentially. And then finally, a couple of stories from Conrad Black. US criminal justice system is out of control, the media are distracted, and 30 years of climate hysterics being proven wrong over and over again. And then on to Electric Scotland. We've I've continued with the Commonwealth of Australia by adding volume 15. If you remember, there's 19 volumes in total, so we're getting towards the end of these. This is for June 1829 to December 1830. I've also done another, and I think the final issue that I found, of the Transactions and Journal of Proceedings of the Dumfriesshire and Galloway Natural History and Antiquarian Society. This is for the session 1911 to 1912. Some of the articles include some notes on estate management in the 18th century, which frankly I thought was fascinating, that, and I'd certainly encourage you to read it. Also the Blacklock manuscript to Annan. Blacklock was a great supporter of Burns, so the fact that these have come to light is interesting. The Carlisle farm and dwelling place at Burns. The development of modern fish culture. Notes on the parish of Kirkegensian. Scotch forestry, the romance and business side of it. And the early coinage of Scotland, with special reference to a small group of the early coins of Alexander III. So I really found the estate management very interesting, and encourage you to have a read at it. It shows how some enlightened estate managers did a really good job to encourage better living conditions, and also how they promoted local industry in the areas. Some really positive stories there. So if you're interested in that history, you should read that one. Then I've posted up the philosophical works of David Hume, one of our great philosophers. And it's in 4 volumes, so you've got a link to that. And I might add that I've also added his 6-volume History of England. So I did links to all these books to the foot of his page. So some good, really good stuff there. Then Adam Smith, you know, I noticed a new book about him, and so copied a review of it to the foot of his page. The article's entitled "The Genius of Adam Smith, who knew there could be no such thing as value-free economies." And to his Wealth of Nations, I put a link to it on the web, but I've now decided to get a copy of it, and so the links now to books that are available on the website. Then I got in a new copy of the Clan Buchanan International for July 2018. And I'm continuing to add stories about India because we're kind of did a whole lot in India. So this is Lucknow and Oud in the Mutiny. I've also got, I've created a new section for the Middle East because frankly I haven't got anything on Scots and the Middle East, and there must be a lot of Scottish representation in there. So I've created a page, and I'm going to be putting up histories, and I've already got some up about Iraq and Israel. So I'm hoping by putting these up will encourage people to try and find information about Scots and the Middle East. And if you find it, please send me information, and I'll get that up on that section. As I've said, I could do with some help here, and so if you know of any Scots who did anything significant in the Middle East, please email me with any information you have, so it would be much appreciated. And then Best Newfangled Family Tree. As you know, I always put up all her issues onto the site, and there's now a great archive of past issues. But some got lost, so I've now managed to put up the whole July 2018, the 2 issues from that year. And I missed issue 1 from the June, so Bess kindly sent that to me, and I've got that up now. So we're now bang up to date, and so we're now looking forward to the August editions coming out. And then I've got a book which is 41 years in India, from subaltern to Commander-in-Chief, by Field Marshal Lord Roberts of Kandahar, who's a VC, I might add. And I've given you a bit of his preface, which is quite interesting if you want to read the story about. And I might add that his father was long in India as well, and so he says, my father and I spent between us nearly 90 years in India. So that kind of background is 2-volume book is got to be of interest. And then finally, the last book I've got up for you this week is the memoir of the life of Lawrence Oliphant, and of Alice Oliphant, his wife, and it's written by Margaret Oliphant, who's the author of the life of Edward Irvin and the life of Principal Tulloch. This is a new edition, so a good read there. And the story this week is Theresa May can't deliver Brexit, but a new leader can. This is an article from CapX by Ken Worthy, who is a former management consultant who has worked in the private sector and across various government departments. It's, as I said to you last week, I'm covering Brexit because it's an extremely important part in our history of the country. And if we're coming out of the EU and going independent again, it's almost like the Union of the Crowns all over. So it's very important to cover it. And we're living in these times, so I really think you need to keep abreast of what's going on. I'm very much pro-Brexit. I believe the opportunities it offers this country is just amazing. So this is a story which hopefully will make you think. And of course, I'm always willing to publish counter stories, but no one ever wanted to give me any. I haven't done a wee note at the end saying even the US ambassador tells us that we need to toughen up, as America wants to do a great free trade deal with us, and they won't be able to do it if we stick with the single market under the ECJ legislation. So mind it's very likely that President Trump will impose damaging tariffs on the EU, and if we're still in, we will be hit as well. Whereas if we're out, we won't be affected. So you know the story is an important one, and you should read it. So that's basically it for this week. I hope you enjoy some of the stories I've highlighted, and I look forward to getting any feedback from you guys, and obviously talk to you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.